I can teach, Angela can teach you guys a tune, and you can play that tune, and that will be lovely. But you can't play the harp, and you don't have a full understanding of music. So what we want to do is help you to become a better learner, understand yourself better, understand music on a deeper level, and be able to learn how to play any tune you want. I kind of can't impress enough the fact that if you're learning music, you are learning music theory. Music theory can also help you understand your music on a different level. Welcome to the How to Harp podcast, where your harp and your journey are always front and centre. I'm Heather Downey, harpist and founder of How to Harp, your online space for expert guidance and endless inspiration. Each week, we are here to empower, inspire, and encourage you, whether you're just beginning or many years into your harp adventure. From chats with world-class professionals to real stories from everyday harpists, to practical tips you can use right away. This podcast is all about helping you feel happy, confident, and fulfilled with your harp. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 36 of the How to Harp podcast, and here we are with our harpy chitter chat with the wonderful Angela. We are discussing today studying theory as a harpist, why you might want to do it, why you might need it. Now, we do have a few days left of our early bird sale on our How to Harp theory courses, where you can grab yourself 40% off. So do also check out the description for that link. And once you've listened to all the great reasons to study music theory as a harpist in this podcast, you can jump onto that link and join us in the course. Hello, Angela. Great to see you again. How are you?
Hi Heather, I'm so excited to talk to you again today. I love these conversations.
I know, I love sitting down with you. It's like, I don't know, it's like a super chill, and yet like it's semi-serious because we are recording a podcast. But I forget sometimes that we're doing that part.
It feels really indulgent to just have an excuse to sit and chat to you about teachy things.
I know.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And it's so funny, isn't it, Angela? Because quite often me and Angela will be talking. We meet roughly once a week to talk about teachy things. We call them our harpy teachy meets. And quite often we'll be talking about something, won't we? And we'll be like, oh, that would have been so good if I'd said that in a podcast.
You almost want to like have a rewind and like, save it, don't say it again.
I know, that's it. I mean, sometimes I'm like, we should be recording ourselves all the time. And then I'm like, no, we definitely shouldn't.
No.
Anyway, we do have a topic for today, and our topic is learning theory as a harpist. Is it right?
Yeah, what an important topic.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we're not going to lie, we are about to launch theory courses in How to Harp. Yay! I know, it's so exciting. The early bird sign up is actually, when this podcast goes out, will actually already be open. So we will have the link in this podcast. But whether you decide to do How to Harp's theory course, or you're thinking about another theory course, Ailey Robertson just did some really excellent fundamental theory courses live with harpists. There's a reason why top quality teachers out there are offering theory courses for you guys. So we're going to talk about why it might be useful for you to study a little bit of theory, who that might be for, what you might get from doing that. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today, right, Angela?
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this with you because I know we're both very passionate about this topic.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are super. I actually have been geeking out on theory, making these courses. So the How to Harp theory courses are based on the ABRSM theory syllabus, and they last for 6 months. They are really full intense, big courses. It's broken down into small, manageable chunks. So the whole course lasts 6 months. There's a little bit of material released every week. And this year, in 2026, we're releasing grades 1 and 3 that roughly follow the ABRSM syllabus with some extra added bonuses for specific to harpists, specific to harp music added in there. And the idea is that at the end, if anyone wants to take the online theory exam, then you can. After doing the course, you can go ahead, book yourself into the ABRSM theory exam, which can be done online, so anywhere in the world, and you can get that qualification. And that's our theory courses, which we're really excited about launching. I don't want to talk too much about them because we're talking about theory in general, but that's the structure of them.
Yeah, great opportunity. And I love that they are specific for harpists, because I think I certainly grew up in a time when you learned your theory on a piano. Everyone started on the piano, and that's how everyone thinks in terms of their theory. And I really like how we've sort of changed in our way of thinking, that people now are able to apply their theory directly to the instrument, because there are differences in the way that you think about the theory. Obviously, the theory, the underpinning is the same for all instruments, but you can apply it in different ways, and there's nuances specific to your instrument that really help you if you know those for the instrument you're playing. Absolutely.
So let's dive into why might someone want to study theory as an adult harp learner. Let's say, an adult a learner who maybe doesn't want to go to like university or, get a really serious formal qualification. Why might theory be important? Well, I'm going to kick us off before Angela jumps in there. eager beaver. I'm going to kick us off by saying, if you are learning an instrument, whether that's harp or piano or violin or whatever instrument you're learning, if you're learning an instrument, you are learning some theory. Okay? You cannot learn an instrument. You really can't learn an instrument without learning some theory, because even if you're not doing scales or you're not doing warm-ups, even if you're not discussing time signatures and you don't know what that means, or key signatures, you are still learning rhythm. And you're learning note pitches. So when you're playing your music, when you're playing your tune, so there's so many people who've said to me like, oh, I'm just really not into like the whole theory side of things. I just want to play tunes. When you're playing your tune, you are working with music theory. You're working with rhythm, you're working with pitch. You are learning to understand music theory, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking a bit about this and just the benefits of doing theory. And I thought about it comparing music to learning a language, and how we can speak languages, and we can also learn the grammar, how to put those languages together. But it's almost like if you were learning to speak French, you'd want to go to France, because that would just bring so much more of a holistic view on that language. You would understand things because you saw their context in such a different way to being able to speak it fluently somewhere else. And I think that's what theory does for you. It helps you to kind of have that fuller depth of understanding. I think sometimes people react to theory more in the way that they've learnt it, if it's been taught as something completely separate. Like I was saying earlier, if you are learning to play the harp and you're having to learn theory on an instrument you don't even play or don't want to play necessarily, it feels very divorced from the practical context, and that's where people can get kind of a negative association with it. But when you see it as, I'm learning this language to play music, and now I'm getting to actually go to France where it's spoken by everyone, and it all just comes to life, I think that helps you to kind of understand how amazing theory can be to bring the music to life for you.
Absolutely. And I love the way you mentioned there, Angela, you relate it to language, because when we are playing music, it is like a different language, isn't it? We speak different emotions, we speak different feelings through our music, or we share them, we communicate them in music in ways that words, just don't quite reach or just don't quite manage. And so if you're wondering, if you're out there thinking, okay, well, she's telling me that theory's good and it'll make me a well-rounded harpist, what will it actually do? So one of the things we do as harpists and as musicians is we communicate through our music. And when you are discussing your music in your learning process, right? When you're learning with your teacher, or you're learning online, or you're learning in a group, or you're sharing your music, you have to have a way to be able to communicate with the people you're working with, whether that be your tutor, understanding your online lessons, going to a workshop that's being taught live and knowing what's actually happening in that workshop. Understanding a little bit more about theory, studying theory on a slightly deeper level, music theory, so that you understand the words for different notes, so that you understand the words for different harmony, so you can actually communicate with those around you. It makes the learning so much easier, right? If someone's there and they say, okay, we're going to put our fingers on a C major triad, and you've done a bit of theory work and you know what that means, you know how it feels on your fingers. Like Angela says, our theory courses are based on learning at the instrument and relating it to your instrument. It's not stale dots on a page. It's the whole communication system. And if you're able to understand those terms, those shapes, it makes your learning so much easier and so much quicker.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful what you've said about it being a way of communication, because I get so many questions about memorizing music. And when you were talking, I was thinking about how if I had to memorize a sentence that was just, different sound effects, it would be really, really hard for me to memorize that. But if I know what those words mean, I'd be able to get that sentence, or at least communicate that sentence, even if I switched one or two things around. And I think that's what theory really helps you do. It helps you know that meaning, like you were saying, which really does. One of the benefits of theory is it does make it much easier to memorize music, because you're able to look at that page away from your instruments and it makes sense. And you're able to see patterns and understand concepts and the underpinning of that music, which you can then bring to your instruments. So yeah, very powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing is about writing music. So I said there, music isn't just about writing the dots on the page. And music isn't about that. It's about communicating feeling and emotion. But it's about sharing. And if you're interested in sharing your music with other musicians so that they can experience it not by listening, but by playing and sharing it on their own, if you're able to put your music down like that, it takes it to like almost a different level. Like Angela and I have talked about this recently. I've been composing pieces for the early intermediate, and Angela's composed a couple of pieces for the membership too. And when people play those pieces, I mean, it's like nothing else, right, Angela?
Yeah, there's no other high. I was so surprised because I got such joy out of playing a piece that I composed. But when people were sending me little snippets or saying that they were enjoying playing my pieces, I was like, this is it. This is so much better than writing a piece. It's the reason to write them, I think. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, especially as a teacher, to see that growth and to know that you created something that you were able to then put in a form that someone else could take and get that joy from. It's amazing.
Absolutely. So learning music theory can help you communicate better or communicate easier with your teacher, those around you whilst learning, other musicians on your learning journey. Working on music theory can help you write down your ideas so that you can share them in a different way with people. Music theory can also help you understand your music on a different level. So I kind of can't impress enough the fact that if you're learning music, you are learning music theory. But taking that extra step of saying, no, I'm actually going to learn it in a more formal or a more structured way. So I really am taking in that learning of the theory, not just kind of the bits and bobs that come along with learning tunes, but that commitment to be like, I'm going to make myself a well-rounded musician and take that step to learn that theory. It helps you understand your music on a deeper level. And you can start looking at music and saying, oh, this phrase is shaped this way, and I understand that because I've studied my music. This harmony is flowing in this way, and I understand that because I've studied my music theory. Right, Angela?
Yeah, I'm sure you find that when you have students who ask you questions, just in general about like phrasing or things to do, and you're thinking, well, the answer is to study theory, and then you'd have this to apply to all your pieces. And yeah, I think that that's a really big thing. I want to come back to what you said about playing with other musicians and communicating with other musicians. I think that learning theory really does give you an understanding for other instruments. So I spoke earlier about how it's great that we're teaching it from a harpist perspective, because I think you want to be able to yourself communicate and understand your own instrument. But it does help you to know what other instruments need, what their specific needs are, even those who are the same instrument or others, so you can play better if you are playing in ensembles or playing in different contexts. And I think that's a really important aspect as well in terms of communicating with people who are not necessarily in the same background as you in terms of how they're using their music. So yeah, I think that's an important aspect too.
Absolutely. And one thing that I see this all the time in the membership, but I'm going to say it now as well. When me and Angela are creating material, when we're thinking about what to make for our harp learners out there, we're actually always thinking about how can we help our learners become completely self-sustainable. Like, essentially, how can we do ourselves out of a job? Right, Angela? Right. That's the goal. We want you to be able to go out, find a piece that you want in whatever format that might be, how you can find it. It might be a recording that you listen to, but it might be a piece of sheet music that's written out for piano or harp even. It might be a lead sheet that has chords. How can we help all of you guys out there, all of our learners, get to a stage where you can go and find any piece that you want and learn it yourself without having to say, hey, can you arrange this for me? Hey, can you teach this to me step by step in chunks? Hey, can you, is there a harp arrangement out there? What do these chords mean? How can we help our learners be completely self-sustainable, right?
Yeah. And theory, like you listed, can help you do a lot of those things. If you've got a harp that's set to only certain keys, or doesn't have levers, for example, and you need your music to be changed to that key, theory helps you do that. There's so many ways that it helps you solve those problems that often students are going to a teacher for or going to others for, that this really does empower them to do it themselves, which is exactly like you say, the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is like a pretty drastic analogy, but I really like that analogy of you feed a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime. A man or a woman, I should say, of course. But I love that analogy because I can teach, Angela can teach you guys a tune and you can play that tune and that will be lovely. But you can't play the harp and you don't have a full understanding of music. So what we want to do is help you to become a better learner, understand yourself better, understand music on a deeper level, and be able to learn how to play any tune you want.
Yeah, I think it's powerful when you can take away those barriers to learning. I think quite a few people start by just learning tunes, especially if they are learning on their own, and then they hit a wall and they realize I just can't get further. And it's because they're missing some of these pieces in between. And really, as teachers, this is one of the things we want to do, and something that you and I are very passionate about, is removing those walls so that the things that they want to do on the instruments, or the things that they will want to do in the future, they're not going to encounter this big block and then have to kind of circle back and take a whole different route to get back there. And yeah, I think theory is a wonderful way of kind of stretching out that perimeter and widening that sort of comfort zone that you're in to be able to go into a bigger expanse, which really is exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. It's really exciting. Yeah, I did have one other reason that I thought of. Oh, do you know what I want to say actually? When I was thinking about why people should learn theory and, this discussion, I thought to myself, I always like to think about more than one side, right? So obviously I think I'm very passionate about people learning music theory, and I think it will really help any learner on their journey. But I always like to think about two sides. So I was like, well, what would be the reasons why someone wouldn't learn music theory? Like, what can I think of as the positive things for not learning music theory? I honestly can't think of any. I can't think of any. Can you think of some?
I think it's much more a case of going back to what you said earlier about everyone who's playing an instrument is learning theory. And so I think it's not so much that people wouldn't want to learn theory, but it's about how they learn it. And so a lot of people are saying, I don't want to go and sit with, I don't know, a theory book and a classroom with a teacher and chalk and talking in the front. And I've just got to memorize a whole bunch of facts. And that's not why I became a musician. But when you recognize that this is actually, there's a real practical element of understanding what you're doing so that you can play with even more depth and more expression and more communication. And how you're doing that is maybe interactive and in a community environment, I think it really does make a big difference. So I don't think it's so much about not learning theory at all. It's maybe how you learn it, what aspects of you learn it, and how you approach that and how you apply that. I think getting to apply what you're learning is really important for you to be able to enjoy it. It's like learning a bunch of French words and never speaking French out loud. You've got to actually apply it. You've got to speak to people with it, and then it comes to life.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so true. I knew you would put wisdom to the confusion in my brain.
It didn't sound like confusion to me.
I have one more thing about, like, I probably could talk about the positives of learning music theory forever, actually. But I have one more thing that I know I wanted to mention, and that was that a lot of the time Angela and I get asked for a course or help with sight reading. How can I learn to sight read? How can I sight read better? There's still a slight aversion to music theory, but there's this desire to learn sight reading. Theory is sight reading. Sight reading is theory. It's quite funny when we get asked these questions. I quite often get asked questions about making a course on this or doing that. And it usually takes me a good year or a year and a half before I actually I'm like, okay, I'm ready to give the course, because I always like to think of what's the actual root of the problem here. If people are struggling with their sight reading or they want to get better at the sight reading, sure, I can produce a course that says, here's some shapes on the harp that are common. Here's how they look on the stave. Here's the note names of the stave. But what's the actual root here of what's going to help people improve their sight reading? Like, what's the root of the problem? And the root of sight reading is learning your music theory. So this is our sight reading course, which is in actual fact, music theory.
Yeah, I think part of you having a heart of a teacher, not just someone who plays music or wants to just, do a short, quick fix, is that you're really wanting to create that depth of learning, that it's not just a teach to the test, okay, now you can play this tune, but it's actually equipping someone to be able to go and play any tune. So we could teach sight reading, and so if someone encountered that exact same kind of tune in that exact same way, or those exact same kind of notes, they'd be able to do that. But you're wanting to go a lot more deeper to enable people to develop their sight reading in a way that'll apply as lifelong learners. And that there's no sort of quick fix for that. That takes a depth and understanding and a breadth that really does grow. And it's about getting on a journey that almost never ends, rather than just turning up for a day or two and I've got this now and I can move on. But it also means that you get to have the fun of learning for a long time, which is a great thing.
Yeah, and talking about the fun of it, actually, I hadn't written this down, but when you just mentioned that there's also something really fun and amazing about the fact that you can learn something that's going to add to and amplify your harping away from the harp. Like, how often do you want to keep going with your learning, but you maybe don't have access to your harp at that time, or you're recovering from an injury, which we've talked a lot about, or you're on a big long train journey, right? And you want to use the time. Like, it's so great to be able to have something that you can have fun with. You can keep your learning progressing. You can keep that momentum without having to be at the harp. Although in our theory course, we do relate it a lot to the harp. So like taking that knowledge to the harp is a really, really great idea, and we encourage it. But you can definitely learn these things whilst not being at the harp, and you can continue your harp learning even when you aren't at the strings. And I think that's something that's to be celebrated and grasped with both hands.
And really helpful, especially like you say, when there's a context in which you can't be at your instruments and yet you're kind of craving that sense of like knowing that you're still moving forward and that you're not pressing pause on your learning journey. It's a great way to do it. And one that when you do go back to your instruments and you'll be doing things, you'll suddenly see things that you've never seen. And I always find that one of the most exciting things in the practice room, when I'm doing something and I'm practicing and suddenly other things that I've been doing make sense. Like I've been working on one technique and suddenly I see it in a piece that I'm doing, or I've been understanding some sort of harmony or theory and I suddenly see that and I start spotting those patterns, and it just brings a whole new breath and life to that piece. So I think when you start seeing that benefit and that interaction, that as you're learning more on your pieces, at the instruments and your technique, and then as you're learning the theory, they kind of build and complement each other. That's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, and really exciting. I actually love that when I learned properly, and I teach this in the harmony course, but when I properly learned about modes and how they can be used, like the way that modes had been approached for me when I was at university was, this is the Dorian mode and this is the Lydian mode. And it was kind of very singular. There wasn't a lot of interaction between. But when I went to explore them myself and create resources for people, and I said, I want people to learn on a deeper level. And I actually explored it, and particularly film music, the way that musicians use these tools to like elevate emotion and just a hint of a mode and a hint here. I remember feeling that excitement of like, whoa, look what they're doing. That's so cool. And I only had that because I knew and understood the theory. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to understand it. So it releases a new excitement, right?
Yeah, I'm sure when you were learning it as just a fact that you had to learn, you probably were one of those people that every time you needed to think what was the Dorian mode, you had to go and look it up again, because it was just this blank list of facts that didn't have any meaning. But when you suddenly were able to apply these things to different emotions or different experiences in movie, music, or in different things, then it's locked in. It's in your memory. It's something that you're experiencing and you're noticing in the world around you, which is powerful.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So that's all the things that I had on my list, Angela, of things that did you have anything else to add?
No, we covered everything I said as well. A lot of our things that I had, you had on your list too.
I mean, it's just, I know I'm a bit geeky, and I have really enjoyed, even if I just got the chance of making the theory courses and that's been it, I've had a great time. I've had a ball. It's been so fun.
Yeah, I think that fun element is just something I want to underline. Theory is a lot of fun. In fact, when I was growing up, I had separate classes for theory and separate classes for instrument learning, and I loved the theory classes. Like that was my favorite, partly because they were taught in groups, which was quite fun, learning with other learners. But yeah, theory doesn't have to be something that I think people can associate as being boring or, something that's away from your instrument and it's not as much fun. It really is a lot of fun to learn. When it comes to life and when you get to apply it, it's something wonderful. And so I don't think you need to be scared off of it by some negative associations or preconceived conceptions about what it may be. I think people will be surprised when they actually start to look into it, how much fun it is.
Absolutely. Amazing. So everyone should sign up for the theory courses, right?
Absolutely. Or at least find a theory course wherever you are and whichever journey you're in. Obviously, we're trying to create resources that will be beneficial, but I'm so glad there's other people as well that are doing that. But if you're an instrument learner, do invest in getting some theory background as well, because it'll only help you.
Thank you so much to Angela, as ever, for a really interesting chat. And remember, we do still have our early bird offer on our theory courses, so jump into that chat there, click on that link and grab yourself 40% off. Now, next week I am chatting to the wonderful Z. She is a member of How to Harp, and she's someone who has studied with me personally in some of our expert coaching sessions. I've really enjoyed our time together. Now, harp is not the first instrument that Z has studied, and she has a really interesting story and approach to music, and just an interesting life in general. It's going to be a great podcast, so definitely join me next week when I sit down with Z. Now, please do remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share this podcast. We don't just say that every week. It actually really helps us to grow. Please do like, subscribe, comment, and share. Do it as a favour for me. All right, we'll see you all next week with Z. I'm really looking forward to it.